And I'm live. Hello, hello, hello. I wonder if anybody's out there. It's been a while. Over a week since the last time I did Geek Speaks Greek. Oh, here's some folks. Hi, everybody. Hi. So I'm going to do my typical spiel of just kind of talking a little bit up front. I've been thinking about Geek Speaks Greek while I was away, and I think I'm going to maybe change up the format a little bit. Maybe like do some of the artwork a little bit after I talk a little bit, because I was just, for one thing, if nothing else, I noticed that like the thumbnails are always me kind of holding up my iPad, and that doesn't make for good visuals. Not that me standing here holding a glass of water is like super riveting pictures anyway. But hi. So, thank you everyone for indulging me while I took this break from, it's been pretty regular production ever since the quarantine began. For those of you who weren't here at the beginning, I started Geek Speaks Greek as something to help out my favorite local independent bookstore here in Brooklyn, Word. I actually was hosting it on Word's Instagram feed. And then from there, I spun it off onto doing it, and that was like every day. I was doing that Monday through Friday, which was so much work. And then from there, I switched eventually to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I was doing that on my own Instagram, where you're watching me now. And then I took a little bit of a break, took a little vacation upstate, had a great time. I'm going to tell you guys all about that. And now it's going to be, for the foreseeable future at least, I'm going to be doing Geek Speaks Greek on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You may ask, why is that? Well, there's a few reasons. One reason, honestly, we've done so many Greek mythological characters here that I'm going to have to start. One of the reasons I'm thinking of changing up the formula a little bit is just to kind of have new stuff to say. We've hit virtually all of the big goddesses and gods. We've hit most of the heroes. We've hit a lot of people. There's still a lot more I could do. But it seems like we burned through a lot of material, so I kind of want to like approach the way I do this a little bit differently, and I have an idea I'm going to tell you about for like the way I'm going to be doing the series for at least a little bit going forward. Another reason is honestly, these do take a lot of time, and more importantly, they take a lot of energy. I get like super wiped out after doing these, and because they're in the middle of the day, they were actually getting into the little bit interfering with me making Dionysus. And since I know, because everybody writes me like all the time, when's Dionysus coming? When's Dionysus coming out? I know you want to help me make that come out. So for at least the future, we're going to be doing it Tuesday and Thursday. Yeah, so let's talk about some stuff here. My idea going forward, like I said, I've done a lot of different material. There's still so many things we could just, I'm sure we all have a million people and figures from mythology we could come up with, what I haven't covered in Geek Speaks Greek yet. But one of the things I want to do, here's some news. I'm moving soon. I've been living in this place that I'm in now in Brooklyn for about, long time. It's actually, I was doing the math the other day. I don't remember exactly how long it is. This is the longest I've ever lived in any place ever, including even childhood homes, right? So I've been here for a while. But in the next month, I'm going to be moving to a new apartment here in Brooklyn, a bigger place. But that means like my life's going to be in some sort of upheaval here. But it gave me an idea, because I've been kind of digging through these elements of my past. And one of the things I thought I would do, I remember showing you all some sneak peeks at some of my artwork, flashing that, and just little bits. People really liked it. I think I'm going to go through my different papers as I'm packing up and kind of do like a book by book episode. The first episode will be Zeus. I'm just going to show you some of the sketches I did for Zeus, some of the original artwork for Zeus, maybe some pages that didn't make it into Zeus, things that I drew and cut out, stuff like that, which I think will be pretty fun. But unfortunately, I couldn't find my stuff for Zeus today. I have a lot of the other books' artwork and know right where it is. You have to understand, I've been in this place for at least 12 years, maybe more. There's closets that I barely ever open. Zeus might be in there. It might actually be in my studio at another location. I have a studio elsewhere in Brooklyn. I'm not sure. In fact, I know that Zeus is in these portfolios I just haven't seen yet. They're somewhere, but I'm going to find them. So today, I'm going to talk about something different. In New York today, it's super rainy. I guess we're catching the edge of that Hurricane Aegis that's just coming up the coast. And it's just been like rainy and stuff. And then I had a crazy incident on my vacation involving an owl. And these two things together combined for me, where I wanted to do, it gave me the inspiration for today. Today I'm going to talk about the Aegis. But we'll get into that a little bit. First, because I want to get into my vacation. So, for those of you who don't know, I took off for a little bit. Oh, I'm shaking this with my foot. I went upstate. I see my friend Anika's here. Anika, we actually stopped off at that place that you got blueberries and petted the goats. Goats are super cute. I finished all my blueberries this morning. That was great. Thank you for that tip. But we actually, my girlfriend and I, we went upstate into this very kind of like remote place, like really middle of the woods, like dirt road, middle of the woods. And there was like a farm down the street, and we actually worked at the farm for a day. It was great. We got to take eggs from chickens, which was like kind of intense because like the chickens, like they definitely look like they're gonna peck you, but it turns out when they peck you, it doesn't hurt. They're very weak chickens. Did all this work. It was great, super refreshing. But before I get into the refreshing part, I want to share with you the absolute horror part, okay? So we drive up there, I think it's Monday, and you know, I'm a pretty punctual guy. I'm just gonna say, if she's here, I apologize. My girlfriend is not a very punctual person, but we both got a late start that day. We ended up leaving Brooklyn some hours later than we expected. So the drive took us up longer than we wanted, so we didn't actually arrive at our cabin until fairly late in the day. Late enough that we were worried because we hadn't actually gotten our stuff together to get groceries and things. We didn't have food, right? So we're like, okay, well, we're in the middle of like the woods. There's nothing else around. We're gonna need to drive like a half hour to the nearest town and find a supermarket. So we did that. We go to the supermarket, buy some groceries and stuff so we can eat for the next few days. At this point, the sun's gone down. You know, it's really remote, like windy roads through mountains and stuff. And just as we're about to go, we're on the checkout line of the supermarket. It starts pouring and storming like crazy. And we're like, oh. So we're waiting. My girlfriend's wearing sandals. She can't go out to the car. I have to go out to the car. She was driving my way, and I get the car for us. We're driving back through these roads, and I've never seen this much lightning. This was like Zeus was in full-on lightning bolt. It was constant. Like, there was no street lights, so it was actually, in a way, it was good with so much lightning, because like, boom, 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 boom. The sky was lit up by, like, lightning, and the rain is coming down in sheets, and my girlfriend, who's driving, she's just, all right, I'm going to put this down, because I need to act this out. She's, like, holding onto the wheel, like, looking forward, like, we have to kind of stick to the middle of the road, because there's so much water coming down, just in sheets. There's, like, it's dirt roads, right? So there's, like, frogs coming out of the road, like, weird, like, why are these frogs here? It's like Aristophanes. Call back to your earlier episode. All kinds of stuff's happening. We finally, after like this horrible, there's like weird mist coming out of the road. Looks like ghosts. And my girlfriend's watching a lot of horror films, so this is freaking her out, right? We come up, we're driving down these, like, the multiple dirt roads. We get to where the cabin is. We pull up, and we'd left a few lights on because we're in the middle of the woods, and we wanted to be able to see when we got there. And we're like, we pull up, we grab some of the groceries, we're walking in, and my girlfriend goes, well, thank goodness we left the lights on. And this is not an exaggeration at all. We walk inside this house. She says, thank goodness we left the lights on. Closes the door, boom, lights go out. And we're standing there in complete darkness. And if you've ever been in a rural area, or if you live in a rural area, you know that this is super duper dark when this happens. And simultaneously, so there was Wi-Fi in the house, and for some reason when the lights went out, an alarm related to the Wi-Fi starts going off. So imagine, we walk in carrying stuff. We're like scary woods all around, frogs everywhere for some reason. Thank goodness the lights are on. Walk in, close the door, boom, lights are out. Beep, weird alarm going off. And we're immediately like, somebody just shut the lights off. Like, they literally were waiting for us to come home. They heard us say that, and they shut the lights off. And my girlfriend turns to me. She's like, make sure all the doors are closed. Now, we're staying in like this. When I say cabin, it was more, they actually called it a chalet. There must have been like 4 or 5 different entrances to this place. It's all windows looking out into the spooky woods. So we're going around. She's trying to figure out how to turn off the alarm. I'm trying to lock these doors. The person who rented us was like, don't worry, the doors never lock. Some of these doors just straight up don't lock. Because it's so remote, nobody locks the doors. So like you're like, oh, this just doesn't fit in here. I'm, at this point, super freaked out. I'm like, yeah. That is such a big coincidence that the lights waited until that moment to go off. And the storm wasn't quite as bad anymore. So it's like, weirdly, after the storm had gotten the worst, like as soon as we entered this house. So we go, I lock the 3 doors on the first floor. One of them doesn't lock. I never told her that. I go up to the second floor where there is a 4th door that lets out onto a balcony. And I go out there. I realize that doesn't lock either. And for a second, I step out in the balcony. And now I'm gonna have to use my sound effect abilities here. So, woods on three sides. There's like a field out in front of us. One of the woods is like there's like a steep incline. There's like a weird cave there too, which wasn't helping our feelings about this at all. So there's all trees just surrounding us. I'm out on the balcony, and the balcony faces that side with the cave and the incline, and I hear this noise, which I'm going to try to do. I'm not going to capture how horrible this was. Something in the woods, maybe sound like 30 feet back, goes, no, that's not it at all. It sounds like I was just trying to clear my throat. It was like a hiss, like a, but like also like a at the same time. I don't know what this is. I've never heard anything like this. Like, I'm like, is that like a generator trying to go on? What is that noise? It's this weird humming, hissing thing. I'm like, what on earth is that? I feel a chill go up my spine, up my front. I'm like, ugh. And like, I'm not normally a guy who gets scared like that. I close that door. I'm like, it doesn't really lock. And I go downstairs. My girlfriend's just finished like kind of like making stuff like stop buzzing. But she's really afraid. She's like, somebody is here. Also, this chalet is built up, and we're looking to see if there's like a fuse box. Maybe we built a fuse box, and we realize, oh no, all that stuff is underneath the house, where someone could easily be waiting for us. There was no guards. There was no animal guards or anything. Like, you just walk under there, and there was like a little room or something underneath the house where I guess the power stuff was. That's where we think it is. Because like weirdly, like 2 of the lights are still kind of on. The power is out, but one lamp still turns on. We don't know why. Because it seems like the power is out, but I guess the lamp holds on to power, and another lamp is giving off this sickly orange glow, like not quite lighting, and that's it. And I'm like, I don't say anything yet about this weird noise, but then it starts getting closer, this whee, whee, and then there's one on the other side of the house. There's maybe 3 of them, it's hard to tell. We're surrounded by these things. We can't see them, it's pitch black. But it's some sort of creature in the woods making a noise like I've never heard before. Like a weird hiss. It sounds maybe like it's a person doing it, but if it's a person, they're not a good person. They're a bad person with many problems. Like, not to say that if you have problems, you're a bad person, but this person was definitely having some bad problems. And she hears it. I'm like, what is that? She's like, I don't know. And we're cursing because we're like, I'm cleaning this up. We're like losing it. And I'm like, it's got to be an owl. Even though everyone knows what an owl sounds like. Hoo-hoo. No, this sounds... I've never heard a noise sound less like an owl making a hoo-hoo. But I can't imagine what else this is. Also, it does seem to be coming up high. So it's either a scary monster like Slender Man or something that's really tall, or it's like a creepy thing in the trees. And, probably is, maybe. I don't know. But this thing is going off constantly. And my girlfriend is so freaked out. She like takes a chair, like, so there's like couches and like tables and stuff. She takes like a folding chair and just puts it in the middle of the big downstairs room where she's not facing anything. Like, she doesn't have her back to anything. And she's a very brave woman. I've never seen her freaked out really about anything. She was going to lose it. She was like this, so like we're pitch black woods, all that spooky stuff. I left the water in the car. I'm like, I'm gonna get the water. She's like, you're not leaving the house. You're gonna get killed if you go outside. And I'm kind of like, she might be right. I mean, there's like these things going, whee, whee, like it's almost that fast sometimes. Like they seem like they're attacking us. And it sounds like really at this point, they've gotten closer. It sounds like they are maybe only like, at some points, maybe 10 feet away from the windows. But we have no lights inside. I shine my flashlight a few times, but like I don't see anything. And I'm like, if I step outside, I'm sure I could see it. She's like, if you step outside, I've seen horror films. I'm pretty sure you're just going to be drawn up to the trees and like blood's going to come down and then I'm alone. I'm like, okay, I've seen that horror film too. That's probably going to happen. She hits the middle. She's so worried. Even though we don't have power, she just starts watching something on her phone. She needs something to concentrate on that's not these shrieking demon creatures. And so she's listening there, and I'm like watching her phone. I, on the other hand, am more like, I actually want to, like, I don't want to like hear them per se, but I want to hear if something goes different. So I'm like sitting on the couch, like laying there, like just listening. And at this point, I'm definitely sure that this is some sort of owl or something, like a demon owl, like an owl from like, Hades. But I'm like, it's got to be it. Because I just want to keep it. I want to hear if I hear somebody come in the doors, I want to hear something. And finally, she's so nuts. I'm like, so let's go upstairs. Because, this seems like bad advice. I'm like, there's only one set of stairs upstairs. If anybody does get in, or anything gets in, we would hear them coming from a long way. And we would have a chance to go out the balcony. And also, like, we'd see it. And so she's like, okay. So we go upstairs. We're in bed. We read aloud to each other from Winnie the Pooh, just because it was either that or listen to demon sounds. And, someone wrote harpies. Yeah, okay. That's what it sounded like, because it sounded like a bird and a human, and it was definitely something that wanted to eat us, right? So freaky. So we finally go to sleep. At about 2:30 in the morning, the lights kick back on, and that wakes us up. But I don't know that either of us had really been sleeping that much, because the entire time, these things are hissing and yelling at each other, or at us. We don't know. 2:30, they go on, all the lights go on. I run downstairs. I'm shutting lights off, checking things again, just looking at the windows to see if I can see whatever they are. I never see it. So, next morning we wake up. Stuff like that's always a lot less scary in the morning, right? But my girlfriend's still like, that's not funny. We're not talking about that. I'm like, okay, we won't talk about it. But a couple nights later, so the next night, we heard the demon things again. We had lights on in the cabin, and they weren't going as crazy. Like, the storm had made these things, or maybe our presence in this cabin, something had made them go nuts that first night. So they were a constant present the second night, but not, like, so angry and, like, overlapping practically. And we only heard, well, there was definitely at least 2 of them. But, like I said, the first night I think we heard 3. Third night there, we're outside making a fire in a clearing, and we're hearing the noises, and they're getting closer. But at this point, we're like, we've definitely decided it's owls or something. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go check it out. And she's like, all right. And she's cool at this point because, like I said, she's not someone who's scared. It was the confluence of events really freaked her out. So I walk around back in the chalet, and I can see that I could hear, again, pure blackout here. I can hear that I'm close to whatever these things are, and I have my little flashlight. And I'm standing still, like knee-high grass. There's just trees all around me. It's pretty freaky, honestly. And this thing is going, whee, whee, like in front of me. And I pull up the flashlight and shine it really quickly. And there's these 2 beautiful owls. About yay big. I thought they were great horned owls at first, but they didn't have great horns. Turns out, I was able to identify them, flip through the book. There's something called barred owls. Not bard like someone who sings you a song. Bard like, you're barred from doing that terrible thing. B-A-R-R-E-D. And I'm looking at them, they're looking at me, and they're like, oh, he can see us now. And one of them, just the most beautiful thing, just kind of gracefully just drops off, shows me its white underbelly, or like really light underbelly, and just flies off silently, which explains how they were able to move around. These things could move, like even when they were super close to us. There were times when they were definitely sitting on the edge of the house. We didn't even get a glimpse or hear anything because they would just move on whispers. And I was just like, oh, that's really cool. It was really cool. Like, I can't tell you the sense of victory. Like, I felt like I defeated this great evil. And, like, it would have annoyed me for the rest of my life if I hadn't actually seen these things. And turns out, did some research. Now that I had a name, I could do a deep dive on barred owls. And this hissing thing they do, turns out is apparently a thing they do to alert each other when they're in the area. So they're homebody owls. They kind of tend to like just be born in the area that they are born in and stay there. So sometimes you have siblings. And I assume that's what these were. These were nestmates maybe. Because I think they were young looking at the pictures. And I think that the third one we heard occasionally was a parent. Maybe a mom or a dad. I don't know enough about them to say that. But they do this yelling at each other thing. Just like this weird hiss. Because they have other noises. They have this, their most famous noise is like a type of hooting where they go, who will feed you? Who will feed you? Or something like that. It's a very cute hoot. But this hiss thing is to let them know when they're around. And they were just freaked out, I guess. So that's my crazy owl story, right? And given the fact that we have this storm and like all these stories relating to storms, I figure I'm going to talk about today the Aegis. Before we get into that, maybe I should actually show some artwork, huh? Got a bunch of that came in. So I don't know. That was a pretty weird, pointless story, I guess. Except for it did influence this. So if you're just joining us for the first time, this is the first time I've done a Geek Speaks Greek in over a week. Oh, so much alliteration. No, rhyming. Geek Speaks Greek is, I'm your geek, George O'Connor. I'm clearly not speaking Greek. I'm speaking English. The Greek I'm speaking about is Greek mythology. And each episode of Geek Speaks Greek, I talk about a different character from Greek mythology or group of characters, be they goddesses, gods, heroes, or monsters. Most recent episode I did was, however long ago it was, we did centaurs. So first drawing I'm going to show, and it looks like I'm going to guess because this is from Mashea, who sends an artwork from time to time. She apologized saying that work has gotten very busy. Oh, believe me, Mashea, I know about busy work. Looks like it was on this 22nd. So it's been like almost 2 weeks since I've last spoken to you. She drew her version of one of the centaurs, which I really, really like. I also really like, I think I'd mentioned this, but like I love the horse teeth. Like that's something I wanted my centaurs to have. And like if you see like, I'm going to say, oh it is, I'm going to say this is Chiron. It is Chiron. It literally says Chiron at the top. He makes a couple appearances. I think he doesn't have like a big starring role in any of the books yet, but he did appear, I want to say, in Apollo. And I have a picture of him smiling with big teeth. I love drawing big teeth. I think I even give him a gap in his teeth. You know, I love, like literally just now, right before we started this, I was drawing a page of Dionysus where he's like a little girl in the scene and he's got like big gap teeth. I just think that's hilarious. So I love the teeth on that one. Let's see what else we have here. So now this, I got 2 drawings from Jamie. And Jamie first sent me, well, I'll show you both. This one's just a little bit hard to see. She drew, this is a drawing of Nyx. Now, Nyx is the goddess of the night. And Nyx is a character who's never appeared in Olympians, but we did an episode. If you want to see that episode, you can go to my YouTube, youtube.com/user/George Olympians. It was a kind of fun episode. We just kind of designed what Nyx might look like on the moment. And Jamie had previously done a version of Nyx that she had sent in. This was an updated version. Now, that was pencil. That was a little bit hard to see, right? Because then, later, and this is super cool. I love when people do this. Oh, what's going on here? Then, she went and sent me... Oh, I lost my spot. Sorry, everybody. Then she went and sent me a digitally inked version that she did. Look how cool this is. This is great. And what's really interesting, I'm not sure. I feel like she's actually, like, this looks like it's the Big Dipper. And these super bright ones around her belt look like they're Orion's belt. I think she literally ended up putting some of the constellations, the actual constellations, in Nyx. This is a really great design. It's kind of like, I remember like talking about when I designed Nyx, I was like, should Nyx have the stars? Because I feel like that's like a real Uranus thing. We're kind of cutting into his spot. But I feel like that's a beautiful design. I feel like you kind of have to have it. Let's see. This one is from Liam. This is his version of Tydeus. Look how great that is. Liam, I love like the way that you've done like the like kind of reverse shadowing on the breastplate. It's so nice. Very good stuff. Let's see what else we have here. Come on, why are these pages doing this? Nope. That's not a thing. So I did a Reddit recently for my new book, Unrig, and my email I used was the George O'Connor. Oh, yeah, by the way, this is a good prompt. If you want to send me something, I sent you the wrong side. Email at georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. This is the best way to get stuff to me. That was the email I used, and now I'm getting slammed with mail. It used to be the only thing I'd get there was stuff like this related to the show. I now have to like go through a million different things because I'm getting all this different mail. Oh, and here's another one from Liam. Philoctetes, the satyr, who in Hercules, in Hercules, was voiced by Danny DeVito. It was very disappointing, but that's really great. Great stuff. And I love that he kind of goes with the lesser known characters. Like these aren't like Tydeus and Philoctetes aren't like, I mean, I guess it shows you how many more people I could do. These aren't the characters that you immediately think of when you think Greek mythology. Here we go. Here is from, oh, now this is cool. Oh, wait, what happened? Here is from Eleanor. This is her drawing of Chiron. And you can see there's his man torso, there's his horse thing. It's kind of hard, right? Like, great job, Eleanor. I really applaud you going and drawing something like that. Because trying to figure out that the way, the human half plugs into the horse half, that's kind of tricky. And we've even, I think I talked about that, how sometimes the ancient Greeks, especially with Chiron, would draw him like he was just a full person with like human legs and like pants and everything, and then like a horse butt sticking out of his butt, which seems very weird. What else do we got here? Now this one is, this is from Moira, and it is a drawing. There's Artemis, and I think this is like a casual Athena without her helmet, because it looks like she's got the Aegis on there. And like the robes are nice and pleated. Yeah, it's gotta be Athena. I like the way she's got her legs, like she's kind of like dancing almost. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Maura. And then one more drawing today. I gotta say, I know some people have had a hard time sending stuff to my mail. I don't know why. Like, I guess maybe they don't have email addresses. I lose stuff if it doesn't get sent to email georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. If you are somebody who really has a hard time doing that, if possible, maybe ask your family member if you could sign up for like just a free Gmail account or something, just because it is so much easier to send that. Because when stuff gets sent to like, if you send it to like my Facebook or on other Instagram, sometimes those drawings just disappear, and then you're also relying on me to have to find it and get it and send it here, and sometimes I'm working right up until this moment and I don't get a chance to. So now this is from Ranka, and I think I saw Ranka here today. Hi, Ranka. And she did some Play-Doh Olympians. Now, not really Olympians here. So we have the wand of Asclepius. We have the head of Medusa. Look at that face. Look at the snakes. That's so great. And then there is Medusa's kid, Pegasus. Look how cute. So great. I love these. And I love when people go into the third dimensions with these. So thank you so much for saying that in. I think that Medusa is really good. That Medusa face. I want to just hold it up again. Like, look. Like, she's got the fangs, she's got the bugged out eye expression, even her hair is very nicely. This is a beautiful job. Good job, Ranka. And, oh, wait, okay, I didn't realize this. So let me say, Ranka herself made the Pegasus, Ranka's mom made the Medusa, and the dad made the staff of Asclepius. And also, it's not Play-Doh, it's clay, which I'm like, I was looking at this, I'm like, I don't think you can make Play-Doh do it that good. So, unfortunately, I think that's all I'm going to have a chance to show you guys today, because I just didn't really get a chance to scrape stuff up from elsewhere. But that's okay. We've been away a while. And thank you, everybody who's drawn pictures. If you can, please send them to my email, georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. And now I've talked an awfully long time. Oh, look, I still have my sign I made up. Let's change that because it's backwards anyway. It would have looked impressive if it was the right way. Oh, it bled through. So today, I thought, inspired by storms, inspired by owls, I was going to talk about, like, where do those things converge? They converge in Zeus and Athena. And I'm like, and what do Zeus and Athena have in common? Well, he's her dad, she's his daughter. Wait, she's his, I think I said that right. But, like, let's talk about the Aegis, which is something I mention all the time here. And I think I have talked about the Aegis a little bit, but like I said, I was going to do, like, a retrospective of my books, going through the artwork, but I couldn't find Zeus. So we're doing this today as a last-minute stopgap thing. So the Aegis, first time we will find mentions of the Aegis in Greek mythology, you'll actually have references to Zeus wearing it. He wears it at a few points in the epics of Homer. And specifically in the Iliad, there's even a scene where it's mentioned that Athena borrows the Aegis, which is interesting because that seems to denote he hasn't handed over to her full time at that point. But Homer's pretty early, and a lot of his accounts of stories don't jive with what other people said. So for me, personally, he's already handed off. We talked about this. That line I say all the time, Hesiod above all. Because Hesiod gives our first account of the Aegis. So when Zeus was a little boy, growing up in Mount Ida on Crete, he didn't have a lot of accompaniment. He was raised in secret to keep him secret from his dad, Kronos, who had a tendency to eat his children. If you tend to eat your children, people tend to hide your children from you because it's just a good idea. And he was raised by the Curetes, who are these, they're sometimes described as like nymphs, sometimes they're described elsewhere as, they don't seem to only be female, so I do kind of wonder about I drew them as female, but I've seen accounts where the Curetes are not female. Sometimes they're like a weird race of people, just like male and female. But the Curetes, anyway, the thing that makes them famous is they're really loud. They take shields, they bang them all day and just yell incoherently, which sounds like terrible neighbors and would be awful to like live above or next to. But if you're trying to like say drown out the screaming cries of a child that from their dad who might want to eat them, it's pretty good because he's like just gonna be like, I'm just staying away from those loud people. He won't hear the cries anyway. And Zeus, he is an immortal. He's a god. He's not the first of the gods. He's the first Olympian to live on Earth, though. The previous 5 Olympians, his siblings, they all get swallowed right away. So he's this new god on the planets. And gods, as we know, they drink nectar and ambrosia, right? So these Kritis, they don't have that. But they do have Almatea. Almatea is this goat. She is... I always had a problem with this line, but it's what I always think of. I love D'Aulaire's Book of Greek Myths. I talk about it all the time. It's one of the greatest books. They refer to her as a fairy goat. I'm like, fairies? That's not Greek. Come on. But she was a mystical goat. Let's just say that. And she had 2 horns. And one horn had nectar, and one horn had ambrosia. And that's what she would use to feed young baby Zeus. Now, even though she was this magical goat, big difference between gods and goats, she was apparently not immortal. Because sometime upon her death, be it of old age or maybe even Zeus killed her. And I'm not saying he did this maliciously. I just worked on a farm for a day, so I'm like a super duper farmer expert right now. You have a very prosaic and down-to-earth attitude about animals on a farm. You try to give them, if you're a good farm, and the farm I went to was a good farm, you give them a good home, you give them a good life, but they have a definite time in which they live. And after a certain amount of time, although they did have one goat they were keeping that was super old at this place, you kind of, those animals become food or something. So at some point, maybe after he was grown up enough, Almatea was put in the stew pot. Or I think she probably just died of old age. Or maybe she died fighting Typhon, an unknown story we never heard. Who knows? He takes Almathea's cloak and makes it into the Aegis. And when I'm drawing in the book Zeus, you will see Zeus, he kind of has this kind of like really like half Batman cape. It's got like the jagged pits at the end and it's brown. And it's my kind of really simplified breakdown. Like if you were to skin a goat, there would be extra skin for the legs, for the head, and the tail. So I give it like these kind of 6 points, but I really stylize it. And he just wears the skin around him. And that's one of the Greek word for goat sounded a lot like Aegis. So that was one of the reasons they came up with this. And that's Hesiod's version. Now, while the Aegis is, especially in Homer, like I said, identified as being an attribute of Zeus. And I think I've talked about the Aegis elsewhere, but let's just mention this again. People are a little unsure of what the Aegis is. Sometimes you will see the Aegis depicted as a straight-up shield, like a battle shield that you wear into armor. And you might be like, goat skin doesn't seem to be a great shield, but you have to realize back in the ancient days when weapons were made of bronze, a lot of shields were made of animal hides stretched tight over wood. So it's not that crazy. They wouldn't necessarily have a metal shield. Think about that. Captain America is a super soldier, so he could do this. But, if you're carrying around a giant disc of metal on your arm all the time, that's going to be super tired. Now, if you're carrying this giant disc of metal and you're going to battle and you're using another giant piece of metal to hack up people coming at you, you're going to want to have something that stops that metal that they have, their swords, their spears, but isn't that heavy. So you don't really want that metal shield. Unless you're a god, in which case, you could probably just, you don't even need a shield. You're like, blow you up with a lightning bolt. But that's getting off topic. So sometimes you see it depicted as a shield. But when I did research for Olympians, going back into the oldest art, you will see I've sometimes mentioned stuff like deep antiquity, Hellenistic period. I've probably heard me mention the archaic period. And that's a period of art, and it's a very loosely defined period, because there's many little periods inside that. I'm using this in a loose, generic way. But it's what the art in that period is a little bit more simplified. It's not like what we think of where you think of great sculpture where everything looks like, it's like they just turn someone into marble and they're all in these great contrapposto poses and they're so expressive and beautiful. You go back before that and their work is kind of stylized. It actually looks a little bit similar to what you might see out of Egyptian art or something, because that was a big influence for the Greeks back then. Anytime you see the Aegis depicted then, it's definitely this cape thing. And to me, that's pretty sweet. I like the cape thing. One of the things I do with Olympians is I try to make these Greek heroes, I'm pulling on superhero references. So why not, most superheroes don't run around shirtless just wearing a mini skirt. Namor the Submariner gets closest, he wears a Speedo. But, Zeus's outfit, not traditional superhero wear. But giving him the Aegis, having it just being kind of a cool sash hanging off around his neck, it gave him some good flow. There's some great bits of movement. That's why people draw characters, superheroes with capes. Batman looks really cool because like you see him jumping and the cape is following through the poses and it kind of it accentuates to it. Batman would look silly as anything if he didn't have a cape. He was just like this dude with pointy ears. Well, no, then he would kind of look like Black Panther. And Black Panther, I'm sorry, he looks cooler than Batman, but he's also doing cat stuff. So anyway, we're getting off topic. It's just still something to accentuate his pose. But the Aegis as a symbol, even though, like I said, mentioned by Homer, it comes into its own. It becomes much more a symbol of the daughter of Zeus, Athena. Now, I have some theories about Athena, and there was some stuff I tried doing in the books that I wasn't 100% successful in. People who watch my book, read my books closely, and if you're watching this, you're probably someone who has read my books pretty closely, you'll know I put a lot of emphasis on eyes. There's a recurring motif throughout the series where Kronos the Titan, after he defeats Uranos, his dad, the sky, he has starry eyes for his mouth and starry field for his mouth and his eyes. And after Zeus defeats Kronos and overthrows him, sometimes the blue part of his eye, well, first off, the blue, I've said, is the same color as the sky because he's the god of the sky. But sometimes, especially when he's being horrible, his eyes are the stars. And I'll have a line that goes with it frequently, he had too much of his father in him. That's a line that Ares throws back in his face when he realizes that Zeus was the one who engineered the Trojan War. You see it a lot of times, like after he eats Metis, he has that. Whenever Zeus is being particularly despicable, he's acting like his dad, and like that little bit, that it's meant to symbolize the power hungriness. And there's other characters where the eyes mean a lot into them too. Like Hermes, you never see his eyes because he's the god of liars. He keeps them covered. There's all little stuff like this. Eyes are really important. And I named the second book The Gray-Eyed Goddess. And the idea behind this, and it's really, it's been a while since I read the book, so maybe it's in there and I'm forgetting. So she's identified in myth as the Gray-Eyed Goddess. And I was kind of playing with that idea. I'm like, okay, so she is very much the daughter of her father. We know Metis is her mother, but that's not every source even says that as much. And she is very close to her father and gets him out of scrapes all the time. And I felt like the gray eyes had to have some symbolism. And the gray eyes, to me, meant like it was representative of his storm clouds. If you recall, when we did a Zeus episode, I've done a couple. One of them I talk about how my original design for Zeus, he was actually going to have the white hair when he was just kind of calm. And as he used his powers and got angry, his hair would turn black and his eyes would have matched. His eyes would go from like the gray to the storm. That bit got dropped, but I did keep it as my explanation for why Athena has gray eyes. The reason I pulled it back last second when I did the Athena book, if you have your copy of Athena, maybe pick it out, flip through, take a look at the color of her eyes. One could argue for a book called Athena the Gray-Eyed Goddess, her eyes are kind of gray-blue. And that was because at the time I had done that, I had just read this whole thing where somebody was hypothesizing that when the Greeks were saying she was a gray-eyed goddess, they really meant she was a blue-eyed goddess. Because apparently blue, as a color, was a concept that got in really late into Greek language. I've even heard it said, there was a great episode of Radiolab where they talk about this. If you look at languages, normally the first color they come up with, like in terms of like linguistically speaking, it might be black or red or something like that. And almost invariably, the last color they come up with is blue. And there was like this whole theory, people are like, maybe like people didn't even evolve the ability to see the color blue yet, which I think that's probably not the best answer. But I think it makes much more sense, especially if you're not thinking, we have this way that we're taught as children that there's the primary colors, red, yellow, blue, and you make all the other colors from that, right? Greeks didn't have that. Other people didn't have that. That's something in modern day when we have tempera paints and we're smashing them on paper in school. Probably they just thought of blue as a type of green or as a type of gray. It just wasn't, they just hadn't made that distinction there. So that idea got in my head, so I kind of actually scaled back her eyes so they're a little bit on the blue-gray scale. So I could have my cake and eat it too. I could point out like, yeah, she's gray-eyed, but it's also because I was blue-eyed. Nowadays, I'm like, I kind of wish I'd stuck more with the storm idea. And like I said, for all I know, it might still be in there because sometimes I remember making changes and then I don't. And it's been quite a few years since I've read that. So then, let's get to the second part with Athena. that was like just such a sideways trek for no apparent reason, explaining the gray-eyed concept, right? So Athena then takes the Aegis. And there's different accounts of where the Aegis comes from. I know right before the break I did an episode on the Gigantes, and I talked about how in the Gigante story, one of the versions, she is going to fight the leader of the Gigantes, and before she does so, she kills this dude named Pallas, who in my version I just made the leader just to cut to the chase, and she tears off Pallas, she skins Pallas after she kills him, and she makes the Aegis out of that. And I read that, and I was like, that's a really cool story. I have some fun time doing visuals to that. But I also really did like the fact that it's a gift from her father, Zeus. So, and I kind of read, and I was able to kind of tie these things together. And there's all these different threads. This is the thing I talk about. It's my favorite thing to do in Olympians. The Greeks didn't have a Bible. There's different versions of the stories. There's even different versions of who Pallas was. Because Athena is called Pallas Athena, right? And one of the theories is Pallas was very close to, I think it's Palantir, and that's from Tolkien. I forgot the word right now. But it meant spear bearer. That makes a lot of sense. She's called that because she has a spear. She's almost invariably depicted with a spear. But then there's a whole other myth that she is called Pallas because there was a competition she had with her best friend growing up, a girl named Pallas, who was the granddaughter of Poseidon. And basically, it was to show off for Zeus, and Zeus kind of used his Aegis. I'm like, oh, the Aegis is in this story to distract Pallas because he doesn't want to see his daughter lose face. And Athena ends up running her friend through with a spear and kills her. And that's why she takes the name Pallas. And also, that's why Zeus gifts her this goat horn thing. Goat horn? Come on, George, there's no horns. This goat skin thing. So I put the two together. I'm like, I'm going to tell both these stories. So I'm going to draw Athena. There's her with her gray eyes, but in black and white, so not really. There's her helmet. My Athena, of course, is always wearing very nice robes right underneath her armor. She's that juxtaposition of hard and soft that kind of makes her character work. And then there's the Aegis that she inherited from her dad, Zeus. Inherited makes it sound like he died, and of course he didn't, so that she received as a gift. But then, to that, in the second step of the Aegis, she adds the hide of Pallas. And Pallas is mentioned as having like this scaly hide. And again, you look at some of the archaic depictions of her, and you'll see there's actually some statues that I saw when I went to the Parthenon that were one of my biggest influences for Athena, where she's holding her Aegis, it's attached to her throat, around her shoulders, and she's shaking it out in front of her. And you see that a lot in these stories. They describe her shaking out the Aegis in front of her enemies, but leading an army. It's supposed to, and it instills terror. People hear this thing, they run. And you'll see that the way the Aegis is drawn there, like it has there's not really anything that's goat-like about it at this point. There's like a trim on it, but it's like scales, like a plate armor almost. So I really like that idea, that we get Athena having, let me draw some of her armor, this kind of like weird scaly plate armor that she wears over her breastplate, over her robes. That the scales must rattle when she's running, like she shakes it, and that must be the thing that, like, just it's like a giant rattlesnake or something. And rattlesnake is a good thing to say for a segue to bring into the third and final step of her. Oh my gosh, look guys, it's the last page of the paper. So we're gonna draw on the back of something. You can tell I've been away for a while, right? This is like, I know sometimes the show is pretty ramshackle. This is a pretty ramshackle show. Here, I'm gonna draw it on the back of what? Can you see that? You can't really tell. It's the back of a drawing of Selene I didn't like. So of course the final element of Athena that ties this all together, of the Aegis, is the story of Medusa. We did an episode on Medusa. Again, check it out. I thought it was a pretty fun one, actually. And then there was an episode where I did a follow-up where I talked about how in some versions Medusa, and the version I chose to tell, and the version most people choose to tell, Medusa is a beautiful priestess of Athena. Let's draw her just as like, just a normal woman. I must confess, I really never came up with a super specific face for her. Like a lot of times if I'll show people, I'm like, who do you think this is a drawing of? They're like, it's Metis, or it's Medusa, or there's a few characters, looking at you, Hebe, too, that I draw that are just kind of generically blonde, pretty people. I should have worked in that a little bit better. So my Medusa is a generic blonde, pretty woman. I mean, she's super pretty. She's got like nice wavy hair, almost like it's reminiscent of snakes. And as the version of the story that I chose to tell, and it's the version that you see the most, either she captures the attention of Poseidon, god of the sea. The older versions of the story, she seems to be into him. By the Roman period, he's just taken her against her will because, like, I guess the Romans, they really didn't like Poseidon because they're like, we're not great sailors. We have issues with him. Anyway, as the most famous story goes, the version I tell in Olympians, she's carrying on this illicit affair with this god of the sea. Now, there's a lot of bad blood, as we all know, between Athena and Poseidon, possibly due to the fact that Athena murdered his granddaughter accidentally, but that could be part of the reason why, right? So, and Athena, you know, no boys if you're Athena, no anybody. You're just like you're an ace. You're off. You don't have anything. And if you're gonna have a boyfriend, just for the love of the gods, don't have it be Poseidon. And if you're gonna have a secret hang-up spot where you're with your boyfriend Poseidon, just seriously, just don't make it my temple. And then that's what happened. She basically walks in the temple, captures like Poseidon and Medusa, pre-snake form, en flagrante delicto, and flips out. And a story as old as time, she's not in any position to do anything to Poseidon because A, he's her uncle, and more importantly, B, he's an immortal, all-powerful god just like herself. It would be pointless. So she curses Medusa into being this horrible snake monster. Now, some versions of the story, like I said, she's already a horrible snake monster. Athena's not even part of the story. Just turns out Poseidon likes snake ladies. That's kind of a nicer version, honestly. It's just like, hey, everybody's got their own thing. You like snake ladies, cool. I mean, I like brunettes. You know? Oh, that's kind of like, she's blonde. Don't be mean. And then she's turned. What's the Fates? Old drawing. She's turned into a snake monster. And we all know this story. I'm just going to draw a quick Medusa because I've talked about Medusa a bunch. My Medusa was done with horrible, gross fat snakes because I discovered that was grosser. You know, sometimes, I mean, there's like kind of a whole theme of like just really gorgeous Medusas out there. Medusa, like I said, one of the most famous monsters of all time. Everyone knows Medusas. Little kids, like little 2-year-olds, like Medusa. Like, why? Who taught you that word? Like, and a lot of times they just draw her like as incredibly beautiful, but she is supposed to be like kind of a scary monster. And I kind of thought like the thing that makes her the scariest is those snakes. If you make the snakes gross, like they just ate a bunch of mice or something, like that makes her grosser. And that kind of ties into the owl thing. I ended up really not talking about owls at all after all that talk about owls, right? Well, here's the thing. There's not really a myth that super duper connects Athena to the owls. It's something that's in the art from the earliest times. I've actually read that there's a couple theories. The Athenians, who of course named their city after Athens, there was a lot of owls in Athens. Does that make sense? They were like, yeah, the owls are birds. We got owls all over the place. This place is sick with owls. It's crazy. I read this history paper once that thought that she probably had roots before she was the Greek goddess. She was probably a Minoan goddess, and that there was probably a connection with birds there. But I feel like having a connection with birds is very different than connection specifically with owls. And also, owls just are like a symbol of wisdom since time immemorial. I don't think it means anything. I think you look at an owl and you're like, that guy knows some stuff. Owls just look smart. They look like they know what's going on. Even when they're just hissing at you in your room, you're just trying to have a nice vacation away from it all. So, don't remember what I was talking. So there wasn't a specific story talking about owls and Athena. But then she turns Medusa into the snake monster we all know and love. Through machinations that would make Zeus proud, eventually Athena dispatches the hero, Perseus, to go cut off Medusa's head. He has some wonderful adventures with that head, turning people to stone, turning monsters to stone. Finally returns the head to Athena. And Athena takes that head, and she just plugs it onto her Aegis. And that becomes the final stage of the Aegis. I gotta admit, part of the reason why this version of the story that I cobbled together, that incorporates all three things of it, I like that it has 3 separate stages. It's kind of like a Pokemon, you know? Like, it goes through these different levels of maturity. So, like, you know, when Zeus has it, it's just a goat skin, but it's still Zeus's goat skin, so it's pretty dope. Then Athena gets it, and she kills a Gigante who was immortal, like he had skin that couldn't be pierced. She kills him so that in a way that she doesn't have to stab his skin through the eye. And then she has that. So she's wearing, it's not immortal. I mean, it's not invulnerable anymore because he's dead. Clearly she had to be able to cut it to put it on herself. But it's still impressive. It's like wearing, like, it'd be like wearing Superman's cape. Like, how'd you get that? It's like, ask Superman. Oh, you can't. He's dead. It's like a symbol. It shows something cool. And then, the final version, she adds on the snakes of Medusa. Again, kind of like this kind of reminder, like, oh yeah, you know what? Not only did I create Medusa, this monster that plagued humankind that could turn people into stone, but I arranged to have her killed, and then I just put it on my coat, and I don't even care. And all this thing comes together to form the Aegis into this thing that makes her like this symbol of, it's a symbol of Athena, the symbol of invincibility, the symbol of victory in battle, and they're solid steps. So I talked a lot, and this was a new episode, you know, just back. How about we just take some questions here? Do we have any ones here? Oh, hey. Pokemon Aegis. Man, if there really is an Aegis called Pokemon, I would love to see it. Let's see. Oh, no questions yet. Oh, this is from Prater 1983. Didn't Glauc, gray, actually mean a bright gray blue? Yeah, that's kind of what I had read. So I'm like, okay, so it's not that they had a blue. They just didn't have the concept of blue delineated the way we did. So when they say gray, they probably meant blue. So that's why I kind of gone wishy-washy on showing her eyes kind of blue, which now I'm a little bit embarrassed. I wish it's gone full on gray. Wow. Scott Siglione goes, the story of Orion tells us that the gods pee. Yes, they do apparently. Are there any stories of the gods pooping? Oh, Now, you would think, if you know me, that would be a story I'd have categorized right off the top of my head if they do. I feel like they don't. Okay, let's just be honest here. Let's just be all adults here as we talk about the most childish thing possible. Peeing is acceptable in a way pooping isn't, right? Like, you know, like pooping is embarrassing. Peeing, everyone's like, oh, I have to pee all the time. And like, but like pooping, you're like, oh, unless you're a weirdo. My brother, he can just poop anywhere. He's just a monster that way. So I feel like the gods who assume human form, like this isn't their real form, we talk about this a lot. I think they make it so the plumbing works for the peeing because there's other things you could do with it. Heck, fountains pee. We've all seen the fountains where it's like a little boy peeing on somebody. It's like, that's funny. You don't see fountains where it's like mud falling out of somebody, right? I think the gods probably don't. That being said, I'm sure someone will come up with a myth where there's there's the one where there probably is something where somebody creates something that comes out of that. If anybody knows one, speak up now. I'd love to read it because that would be interesting. I'm going to look that up because I'm like, yeah, probably. Let's see. Megan wants to know if you could do Adonis or Hermaphrodite. Those are both great ideas for people I should definitely do. So, I probably will do those ones. Just not maybe immediately, or maybe I will. Because basically, like I said, my plan is I'm going to go through artwork and stuff and talk about stuff that went into Zeus and different design choices I made there and things like that. But if I don't find Zeus right away, yeah, maybe that's both good choices, Hermaphrodite or Adonis. Maybe, both. How far along are you with Dionysus? A little bit over halfway done. It's coming along nicely. Really drawing some fun stuff in it. It's been really interesting. Jen 1999, how do you decide the color of the gods' clothing? Sometimes when I draw the gods, you'll notice a lot of times they have a color scheme that repeats. Like they all kind of stick to the same thing. Athena's clothing I mentioned, it was the mixture of the hard, soft. Zeus, he has a sky blue. It's not exactly sky blue. He has a blue cloak. Mini skirt, because he's the god of the sky. Poseidon has like a kind of lime, like a sea green loincloth because of that. Hades, it's dark. He's all earth tones. Most of them you can kind of see that. Hera, interestingly, is one of the only characters I draw who really changes up her color scheme a lot. Even Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, who you think would pay the most attention, she's almost always the color of like the sea with maybe some coral highlights. But Hera, I've drawn her sometimes in peacock blue, sometimes in green, sometimes in this orangish red, pinkish, like coral color. She changes up a lot. Not really sure why. Just never really felt like there was one scheme that needed to be with her. But mostly the color schemes of the outfit are some sort of reference to their domain. Demeter's green. Apollo is like a golden lit by the sun color. Artemis's is kind of a blanched out blue, like it's being lit by the moon. Hermes has kind of really unostasious earth tones for the most part, because he's a very domestic god that you would expect to encounter in your house, but he's not without a little bit of ego. So he actually has that bright red cape. He has a little bit of traveler's panache, because he's a god of the people, but he also puts himself above the people. There's a lot of little things that put in with that, and I'll probably talk a lot more when I go into like in depth in the different books. Eleanor would like a Nike episode, please, from Mrs. Jamali JP. I would love to, and I've talked about doing Nike before. The problem with Nike is that Nike doesn't really have a mythological presence. I would probably have to include Nike in a episode where I did things like, maybe I would do like Deimos and Phobos and Nike together. Like gods who are maybe not really gods, are personifications of things related to war or fear, things like that, because they don't really have a presence. There's not like a story where you're like, this is the story of Nike and the cricket. Like, you don't get that with Nike. She doesn't seem to be personified. She appears in art. Even in art, you'll see her often too, she's in a diminutive form compared to the other gods that she might, like the famous statue of Zeus at Olympia, he's holding Nike in his palm. And I think it's because she symbolizes a virtue more than she was like an Olympian who has like a full personality filled with virtues and lots of personality flaws. But she's kind of like that. When I saw the drawings today, I like to think Athena wears a soft, permanent smile all the time. You know, that is kind of the way I draw her. But it's a different smile. Sometimes she just has a placid smile a lot of the time. But a lot of the time I draw her, especially if she's messing with Ares or hanging out with Hermes, you'll see the smile takes a little bit more of a smirk, or Poseidon. My Athena has definitely got a little bit of an edge to her that I didn't envision when I first started writing her. I thought she was very even-tempered, almost like a Mr. Spock sort of very logical character, but I think she's actually surprisingly fiery and likes to cause some stuff and hide behind that weird sort of facade. Will we see you touch on Helios, Selene, and Eos? Backpack Reptar, that's a cool name. So I actually have done episodes that you can catch at my YouTube on Helios and Selene. Haven't done Eos yet, just plain up skipped her. Even talked about in the episode with Orion, like, really need to do Eos. So I'm gonna put this down. Eos, Adonis, Hermaphrodite, Nike. There, I have that's like 2 weeks of stuff right there. Let's see what else we got. Hellenic Moonlight. Isn't Nike often considered part of Athena? Yeah, in much the same way as, like, say, Aletheia is considered sometimes a separate goddess without any mythology or personality of her own, and is sometimes just considered a part of Hera. You see the same thing with Athena, where she'll be called actually literally Athena Nike, Athena Victorious. Sometimes it's just like an Athena in like a dramatic pose, holding up a spear and like having just kicked some tush. Let's see what else we got. Do the Olympians use the restroom only if they wanted to? So that's a Greek mythology fanatic. I am going to say yes. I feel like that's the case. So the one scene we see gods peeing is in Artemis, the birth of Orion. Because Orion, whose name is very close to the word for urine, Orios, the best story about how he comes about is a bear skin is put on the ground. It's on purpose. And this guy, be a king or a farmer, prays to the gods to do this, and Gaia works this magic, and Hermes, Zeus, and Poseidon all take a whiz on it. And I threw a little joke. I don't show it because I'm not going to draw that picture, but you're kind of like looking from here up, and like you definitely can read from the text that Zeus and Poseidon finished first, and Hermes is maybe a little nervous, and he's like, I had a lot of water last night, as a joke that nobody laughs at. I feel like they don't need to. Yeah, I feel like in that moment they're like, oh, we should probably do this. But I feel like a god could probably go 3,000 years without peeing, and then if they just need to escape from a boring conversation or something, or want to check out graffiti in a bathroom, then they'll have to pee suddenly. I think it's a choice matter. He writes, is there a myth Hermes lies when he's adult, or we don't know because his lies are never revealed? Oh, yeah, because we talk about that. He's the god of lies, but he doesn't seem to do... He seems surprisingly truthful as an adult. Like, he's given all these jobs because he's such a handful, to say the least. Is there a story where he notably lies as an adult? There's got to be some stories where it happens, but it's maybe not a major feature. Only thing I could think of really quickly is the invention of the aulos, the double flute by Athena, where I know very specifically at first he doesn't want to tell her that she looks silly blowing it. I don't know if that's lying or just trying to like spare her, her feelings. Oh my gosh, guys, we're only down to 30 seconds left. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into this first episode of Geek Speaks Greek back after my vacation. Join me on Thursday where I'm going to do either a retrospective on Zeus or one of those characters we talked about or something different. We don't know. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'll be posting this on YouTube later today, and I'll see you all Thursday. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.